Ladies and gentlemen on the space, good evening and welcome to this episode of the Insights Express series. My name is Katongole Arnold, and this is where I would want us to begin from to give this background and info as we get into this conversation. Politics has never been merely about winning elections. It's about defining the character of a nation, strengthening the institutions that hold it together and shape the opportunities available to a generation yet living and the unborn. Across the world, democracies are facing and are being tested by economic uncertainties, growing public debt, widening inequality, shifting geopolitical alliances, and an increasing demand for accountable leadership. From Washington to Nairobi, from Brussels to Kampala, it's one question that continues to be an echo. What kind of future are we building? Uganda stands at the center of that conversation, a nation blessed with one of the world's youngest populations, abundant natural resources, and immense human potential, yet still confronting and enduring questions of governance, public trust, economic transformation, and national cohesion. This evening, we step beyond the headlines and political slogans to examine those realities through a dialogue, not to settle every debate around, but to understand the choices before us, the lessons from our past, and the possibility that lie ahead. Our guest has spent decades in public service, and he knows around this corridor called governance, leadership, and politics. A former military commander, a politician, and a founding leader of the Alliance for National Transformation. His journey has often been defined by a call for institution building, constitutionalism, rule of law, and a principle leadership. Tonight, we not only ask where Uganda is, but where it's going and what it will take to get there. My guest tonight is retired Major General Gregory Mugisha Muntu. General, good evening and welcome to the space.
Good evening, Kat, and good evening, dear listeners.
General, tonight we begin from a very vantage point that I would want to pose to you. General, when we talk about Uganda being at crossroads, what does that mean actually? Before actually we dive deep into the conversation, when we say this nation is at crossroads, there are opposing voices, there are voices that don't know. General, we are at the crossroads, and if we are, what does it mean to be at crossroads, General?
Yeah, we've had an unfortunate history in our 63 years since independence. We've never had a smooth transition where we've had one government handing over to another. Because I think we faced our first crisis in 1971 when politics was mismanaged. The army took overthrew the first UPC government. That's when General Amin took over. And then there were about 8 years of military rule, which were quite turbulent. And then the invasion of the Tanzanian forces with the Ugandan fighter groups, Fronas and Chikos Malum, that rode along and took power. I think Kampala was taken around 11th of April 1979. And then there were 2 years of UNLF, which had about short-lived governments, about 2 of them, or 3, one under the late Yusuf Rule, the other one under the late Benaisa, and then the military commission, which was headed by Mwanga. And that's when UPC's second time came into power in 81. And then the Bush war started. And then 85, the army again took over from the late Dr. Milton Obote in 85. And then we took power in 86. January. So since 1962, we've never had one government hand over to another. And one of the biggest challenges we've had is at the same time not building long-lasting institutions and systems of governance so that power lies in the hands of institutions, that we would have power exercised based on the rule of law and having constitutions that the citizenry would believe in and those who would be governing would believe in. That's what the challenge is, and we had hoped, those of us who took up weapons on 1486, that we had seen the end of that, and that would establish governance rooted in the rule of law, rooted in the constitution, and that for the first time we would see power change hands peacefully. Unfortunately, we seem to be rotating in a vicious cycle, even at this point in time. And I suppose that's why one would say, or that's why people are saying that we're at a crossroads again. Unfortunate as it is, but that's the reality that we are faced with.
Thank you very much, General. That opening statement makes it very clear why we have this conversation tonight. In your opening statement, you've mentioned that we have failed to have a transition of power. We have failed to have lasting institutions. And you've talked about how that journey started in 1971 when President...
1962 is when we became independent.
Yeah,
in fact, maybe that's the only peaceful handover of power, when the British gave up after the pressure that they were, and they were giving up power literally in all the areas where they had been holding power as colonial entity. Uganda was fortunate that we didn't engage in war. Kenya did. A number of other colonies fought. In Uganda, we were kind of a protectorate, and in 62, the shift or the power from the British to the nationals was done at Kololo, 1962, 9th October. I think that's the only handover of power that we know of, shifting power from one government to another.
Wow. General, to start exactly from there, this very year as we were near to the polls, there was a presidential debate that was hosted by the NMG, particularly NTV, and when you were asked about how we could improve or how we could restore public confidence in governance and public institutions, you said there is need for professionalizing security agencies. You also said there is need for respect to constitutional order and to end political interference. General, this very year, after the events towards 15th January and after it, we've seen a lot of things that have happened that include the continuous clampdown on different media personalities, to media organizations, to the continuous arrests and by security agencies. And the question is, when you ask the people or when you have conversations with the ordinary and general public, there is growing urge to see that there is reform in these public institutions. But unfortunately, the reform or the rule of law or the constitutionalism, the practice in these organizations seem to be hanging on oxygen. And this worries us so much. And people continue to distrust these institutions. Even when you talked of these remedies, what poses this persistence to in response and to order by these institutions, by public institutions in this country general?
The challenge we are faced with as a people, as a country, is twofold. One, we've never had leaders who put country first. And as is common to human nature, when power is unchecked, it is abused by those who hold it. So there are two ways in which countries can be built, a point where governance is rooted in institutions, and where you find there's observation of the principles of good governance, some of which, for example, the observation of the principle of separation of powers, and ensuring that power is exercised based on institutions rather than in powerful individuals. Now, we've not had the kind of leaders whose main focus was to do that, because there are times when you find a country, the country's citizenry has not raised the levels of political consciousness, where they themselves, through participation in exercising their rights, cause those who lead to account, to be held to account. We've not had the levels of political consciousness rise to a level where the population is able to stand their ground and hold leaders to account. Nor have we had, at any point in the last 63 years, leaders who are able, in spite of the levels of political consciousness still being limited, for them to lead and do what is right. And that's the dilemma we have. You just talked about a debate which happened in 2026. In a country where the levels of political consciousness are high, you cannot have a debate of that nature and then you have only opposition parties involved. And then those who are in leadership are not held to account by the population. And, life goes on as if nothing happened. But basically what that debate indicated was that the leader, General Museveni, who didn't show up, takes the country for granted. He doesn't care whether he is engaged in a debate or not. After all, I think he believed that there's nothing the population would do. And it's not only General Museveni, any other human being who doesn't have the courage, who doesn't have the discipline, who doesn't have the humility to know that when you are in a position of power, that you are there to serve. So it's a dilemma. Something we need to recognize, all of us, that yes, you have got those who are in power, who are mismanaging it, but at the same time, our participation as a citizenry, it leaves a lot to be desired. The moment any leader or any group of people take the population that they lead for granted, they will abuse power. And therefore, it's unfortunate that we also, in a sense, when you hear conversations, when you see what is happening, on social media, on TV, and all that, it is, lamenting, morning until evening, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, but at the same time, people hoping that something good will happen without knowing that nothing good ever happens unless people are ready to organize themselves, to stand by their rights, and to hold the leaders to account. Is it easy? Never. It's never been easy. Many times it requires a lot of sacrifices. Many times there are also costs. But at the same time, when a population acts as if without their participation things can change by themselves, it never leads any society to a level where it is led by those who lead it with respect. That's where we are at now. A problem at the level of leadership, a problem at the level of those who are led. So we'll have to work out ways of how we can deal with that kind of situation, if we are going to break out of this vicious cycle that we've been rotating in for the last 63 years.
General, that brings exactly a very core question, that when you talk about the vicious cycle that we've rotated about and gone through for the last 63 years, or as a nation, this particularly brings me to this point that we cannot shy away, though even when we would want to turn a blind eye, that your former colleague and President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has led this country, like you just said, for 40 years. In the time of these 40 years, there is conversation that Uganda has experienced periods of stability, economic reforms, regional military engagement, and infrastructure expansion. But during this same period, debates about succession, constitutional amendments that are right, institutional independence, and peaceful transfer of power have become increasingly central to public discourse. I mean, these lead the radar in the public, and very often analysts argue that the greatest uncertainty facing Uganda is not simply who governs it next, but how this transition eventually happens. Geno, this brings me to a question that you've said, unless we get to work around a way how we get out of this vicious situation that we've been in for the couple of years, what institutional foundations must be laid now to ensure that whenever change comes, it strengthens rather than destabilize this country? Because even if, General, now let's say that you're now in opposition and you left government many years ago, but when we get the next leadership, how do we make sure that it doesn't break this nation to beyond where it is now, but rather strengthen it or reunite it to how many people see, or what was the dream when you went to the bush in 1981?
One, in the first place, we made a wrong turn in 2004 when we amended the constitution and removed term limits. Because term limits was a safety valve. We have seen many African countries which had been as unstable as we have been in our history. But when they adopted the provision of term limits in their constitutions and held on to that, it's not that they have had the best of leaders, but that it's been acting as a safety valve. So that when one leader, if the leader is good for the country. If the leader has got whatever challenges they would have in terms of governance, 10 years they will be out. Another one comes in. And that, in a sense, strengthens the institutions. Or at least governance is best on institutions as its foundation. Rather than a situation where there is uncertainty when you have one leader, and then because of the situation like we have here in Uganda, where you have a strong-willed leader, and he is the one in charge of the national state security apparatus, the national resources, and the political environment is basically manipulated and controlled through use of money and using the national security services as a tool for coercion and the creation of fear. When you have that, and then you have got a population which is cowed, then change becomes uncertain. The only way you can build on what you just talked about is some infrastructure development, a sense of economic stability for some time. That can only be sustained when there is a stable transition. When another group, a party, takes over and are able to conduct reforms. But if that does not happen, then unfortunately a country can go through turbulence, as we have seen quite a number of African countries go through turbulence. At least those which did not maintain or which did not adopt the term limit provisions in their constitutions. So right now the biggest challenge we have, much as people can quote figures in terms of economic development, we have seen countries that were more developed than we are here, but they ended up imploding because they were never able to resolve their internal political contradictions. So our biggest challenge now is how to, in spite of all the challenges, in spite of all the weaknesses there are in terms of governance, how to cross that line where there is a smooth transition or a stable transition, peaceful transition from one government to another. If we are lucky to cross that, then the question is the nature of people who would take over. That also matters a lot. If their driving motive, the party that would be that would take over, if they are disciplined, if they have got set objectives and principles that guide them in how to manage a country, if they look at the country over and above self-interest, the self-interest of individuals involved in that government, then they can conduct reforms and the country would get back on track. If change happens, or not if, because it's not a question of if, when it happens, because change is inevitable. When it happens, and any group which gets in, the thinking, the ideological orientation in terms of how power is managed, if it is similar to what we have now, then would remain in the vicious cycle, without doubt. So two things are critical, therefore. One, that change happens in a smooth, stable way. Two, that the group that goes in is different in terms of their orientation, in how they understand power and how it is managed, in knowing that when they are in power, they are in as to serve. That they are not in to use power for self-advancement. Unfortunately, that's what we have had for the last 63 years. We never had a team of leaders who thinking is focused on the country being over and above self. We've never had that. Does that mean that we've never had people who care about the country? We've always had them, but they've always been in a minority. At no point have they ever been the dominant force in any group that would be in power. So that's another critical question. And therefore, what the challenges that we are faced right now with are two. One, what do we do to ensure that we can have a smooth, stable transition? Two, that the group which goes into power is disciplined, cares about people, cares about country, is not corrupt, and therefore would use that vantage point of holding power to develop the country, to create institutions of governance, to put systems of governance in place, and to ensure that there's justice, there's fairness, there's equality before the law. And that we have a situation where the population itself feels confident that being citizens, being taxpayers, that nobody is going to wake up one morning and choose whatever to do in whatever manner they want to do it without caring about any checks upon themselves. When you have that, that's when you have abuses of power, as we have had in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and now we see ourselves in the same situation as we've had in the past, unfortunately. So we need, therefore, to focus on those two things: stable change and having a team of people who will move this country and put it back on track.
Wow, General, when you talk about that, and you clearly take us back how this has become normal to abuse power, for those in power to think they are in power, to own it and enrich themselves. Unfortunately, General, Uganda, unfortunately or fortunately, today Uganda holds one of the youngest populations in the world, and this, you would imagine, this is the greatest asset the country has. But many of the young people, because for clarity and to the listeners here, nearly 4 out of every 5 Ugandans are below the age of 35. This basically makes young people more of the 45 million. But the key question is, General, how do we rally more young people to the rightful national causes? Because many think that the current way of doing things, because it has been normalized, they think it's the right way. One, many have resigned from the issue or from the points of engaging in governance, leadership, national discourse, because they feel probably there is nothing that will change, or they will be arrested like many of their fellows have been arrested, or they feel those in power have aged, but they have resisted to leave. Even those that try to shake them, the end results are prisons, vicious cases, disappearances, abductions, and different threats. General, what do you speak about this, and how do we convince young people that the role of national building doesn't stop with who they see in power, but it starts with them? Because even at the time when you people went to the bush, you were more or less in their age or in our age. You were university students, you were fresh graduates, you were new people in working sectors where your other colleagues were coming from.
Yeah, we were young, so that's why. In fact, for me, I never pay a lot of attention to people who keep talking about age. we were young. I was 23 years when I went to the bush. When we took power, all of us, the majority of us, maybe 90% of us, were below 35. But along the way, we lost direction. So age, to me, really doesn't mean much, because, as I've said before, you can have people abusing power at any age. You can have people in their 20s who abuse power. You can have people in their 30s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 80s, whatever age. It's normally the mentality. It's the mentality. It's the ideological orientation of the people. Whether they abuse power or whether they exercise power in respect of the population by having governing institutions which are rooted in the rule of law. That's where the difference is. So, however, the fact is that the majority of the population now is young. About 70+% are below 35. And that's critical in the sense that when we continue engaging in conversations of this nature, when those who are conscious of the challenges we have and they want to move the country back on track, operate within their spheres of influence, whatever those spheres of influence are, whether it's in the workplace, whether it is around family, whether it is in a business, in a clan, or whatever it is, to keep on the conversations, to know that change, meaningful change, can only happen when people are engaged. The worry I have is to find that many people seem to think that they can disengage, sit on the sidelines, and then hope that something good will come out of the evolving situation. I have never known that you can have anything good which happens by accident. Anything good on this planet, whatever is good, normally is an outcome of conscious, focused, consistent efforts by those who want to shape whatever good they want in their lives or in the future. Like now, our future, it is not going to happen by accident. If we are going to have a better future than we have now, it must be an outcome of coordinated effort from everybody who wants to have a better future. You can't wish it or just sit on the sidelines and hope that something good is going to fall like rain. That won't happen. It never happens. It won't happen even here. There have to be people who keep working round the clock in different ways, but there has to be engagement. And people have to keep stoking wherever they are, so that eventually leaders now and those who come in future know that there is a population which knows its rights, they are citizens, they pay taxes, and a government in power uses the taxes of people to do whatever that government does. And therefore there has to be respect of the rights of people. Population is the foundation of a country. So the government can't exist without people. How can a government operate unless there are people paying taxes? That's why there is a problem. The people in power seem not to recognize that, or if they recognize it, they don't respect it. The people who are led are cowed. They fear. It's natural to fear. But at the same time, when people recognize that, fear itself is not going to lead to anything good, if fear leads them to disengagement. Fear is natural, but it can also be overcome. Also, if people recognize that anything good that they are going to have in terms of our future, that there must be full participation of the population. We have parliament. Parliament itself is cowed. It's an unfortunate situation, but at the same time, we must realize that anything good which is going to happen will have to be influenced by people being active, in raising voices, in knowing that, okay, at times there are costs, there's no doubt about that. I also don't know any situation in this world where things are ever easy. When you look at history, the evolution of governance, it comes with costs. The moment you avoid the costs, you continue in the same situation. The tendency always is that the situation keeps on deteriorating. And the cost gets higher and higher. Of course, until the inevitable time when nature itself, even when people are disengaged, nature itself reaches a point where the dynamics of change become so necessary that change simply happens. We have seen that happen in many countries. Unfortunately, when change happens, when it is not well directed, it can be, so many problems in the country. We have seen that happen. We have seen countries fall apart. And therefore, my own proposal is that much as there are challenges, yes, it is not that we are not aware of the danger that there are, but if we want a better future, we must work for it. I don't see any other way around that.
Wow. Generally, you talk about that, and that efforts probably have been done. We've seen young people and other people trying to participate in this, but it seems the state is also ready to clamp down on every attempt to raise grievances, to
It wouldn't be the cuts.
Yes, General.
People who have a tendency of wanting to hang on to power, those, as we speak now, not only here in Uganda, quite a number of countries where you find dictatorships. These are not the first time. Nevertheless, they still change. Why? Because people reach a point and say, no, enough is enough. And change happens. The unfortunate thing is when change happens, like we took power in 86, and then you find that there aren't enough people who are prepared to keep on making the necessary sacrifices to build a new culture of good governance, where even leaders recognize that if they get out of line, that the population is going to say, no, you cannot cross that line. The two go together. The two go together. There are countries which have been lucky, they have had good leaders. Like in Tanzania, I think many people use it as an example. Tanzania had a leader who was, disciplined and who really cared about Tanzania over and above his own self-interest, and build the foundations of governance. Whatever challenge they may have now, but I doubt whether anybody cannot give it to the late Mwalimu Nyerere for building Tanzania, which became a nation, and built institutions, and then passed on. Other African countries, the number of African countries which were never as lucky as Tanzania was. Another country which was like again was under Ketumire Masire, Botswana, and you can see running as a democracy. Since independence, they have never had any form of turbulence. But I've also seen countries which lost track, like Ghana, but then recovered. Now they are on track. So it's not something that the things we are talking about are not just simply picked from, space. They are realities. They have happened. We have seen countries which have gone back on track, and governance is now rooted in institutions. And they have also established good governance systems. But they went through challenges, and there were sacrifices without doubt. And the population reached a point where it said enough is enough. So we cannot keep on hoping that something good is going to happen without working for it. Basically, that's the point I would like to make. Are there dangers in it? Absolutely. Well, I mean, life is full of dangers. Every time we get out of our houses in the morning, nobody knows when they are coming back. You don't know whether they are going to be engaged in an accident. Actually, there are more people who die of natural causes and accidents than those who die most times in because of politics, except when war breaks out. So to fear to do what is right just because people fear to die is well, fear is natural, yes, but it's so self-defeating for people to expect anything good without a cost.
Thank you very much, General. That point clearly gets home, and it just takes me to my next question to you, General. That political competition is very natural. I mean, in every democracy, but national cohesion remains essential for long-term development. My question, General, is how do we build a Uganda where political competition does not become diversion and does not become division or doesn't cause diversion, and where citizens can agree to disagree without becoming enemies, but also generally, if you look closely at the future of multi-party politics and the opposition, which is threatened at very many times, people have think opposition in this country and government are lifetime places, but opposition is not a lifetime place. It's just a title one holds when they are not in power, and when they get to power, they become government. But many Ugandans continue to ask whether opposition politics should focus more on unity, ideology, institutions, and electoral strategies similar to government. But how do we make sure, General, that we agree to disagree but don't become enemies? Because we've seen this right from the party that rules here, the NRM. We've seen this at the opposition parties, and at the end of it, even after politics, this becomes like a standard to which society is governed. General, how do we close this rift?
We have to build a culture where the pool of political actors, regardless of whether they're in government or outside of government, because we are all products of our society. Once you build that culture in the society where people recognize that, you know what, to disagree politically should not necessarily mean that you become enemies. Once we deliberately work on that so that people who move up in politics, one, through the population itself saying this is the nature of politics we want. If there is anybody who has got any signs of intolerance, they are not going to go in any position of power. It's a painstaking process. It takes time, but it has been deliberately built. It cannot fall like rain. It can't happen by accident. There must be that level of consciousness, political consciousness, in the population, by those who are in politics, even those who are not in politics necessarily, to say, you know what, anything political, any political disagreements must be resolved through dialogue, through discussions. Once we build that culture, then it doesn't matter whether there are those in government or those in the opposition, because they are influenced by that culture, and the nature of politics would have changed. Where you disagree, but you don't necessarily become enemies. I mean, countries which have that, it is not that they are any different from us. They are not. It is what they are focused on and purposefully built and established to become their national culture. And therefore, we must keep focused on that. Build and keep on expanding the numbers of those who think like that, because basically we have people who already have that kind of character. Their nature in wherever they are, even in parties. You go in parties and you find there are people of that nature. But unfortunately, most times you find they are never in the majority. Why? Because even it's not that Uganda doesn't have people who are principled, people who are disciplined, people who care about the country more than them, over and above their own self-interest. The unfortunate thing is that the majority of them don't want to step into politics. You hear people saying, oh, politics is a dirty game. Yes, it's a dirty game, but how will it be cleaned up? You think the dirty can clean up the politics? No, it is those who want it clean that have to clean it up. So if they remain outside of politics, how will it be cleaned up? that's the dilemma I normally think we are faced with. Well, the people who have the capability, if they came into politics and they became the majority, they'll be able to change the nature of politics in this country. But they are there. They are in business. They are in professions. They don't want to touch politics because they think that it's risky and it's dirty. And then somehow they hope it will change itself, or those who are dirty in politics will change it. That's just a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. They want to change it, they have to step in it. Direct some, others to keep influencing things from wherever they are. So the majority of people who are in politics are those who know that, what you are talking about, that you can disagree, but you don't become enemies. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality we have. I know for sure that in Uganda there are many Ugandans, I think they are the majority, who, if they determined and came into politics and exerted influence, we would move in the correct direction. But people are playing safe. People are hoping that things can change for the better. Whether the people who have got those capabilities to move things in the correct direction, getting into politics or influencing it from wherever they are. There has to be a lot of training. Parties, many people don't think that parties are of any use, yet parties are the vehicles of governance. Every party will give you what it has. If the majority of people in a party are those who don't, if they are not disciplined, if they don't have a culture of tolerance, any party that is in power that does not have a dominant force of those who are in it, in leadership, disciplined, tolerant. When a party is in power, it will be intolerant, it will abuse power. There's no doubt about that. Anybody who wants to put right the politics of this country, you go into parties so that the parties have the culture that you want to be the basis of exercising power. You want discipline, you want accountability, you want justice, you want fairness, you want equality before the law, you have to have the dominant force in the parties whose thinking is in alignment with what you desire. If you have got people in politics who are there just simply for money, if they are the dominant force in a party, and that party it gets into power, that's exactly what they will do. So the people who are disciplined, the people who believe in accountability, the people who believe in the rule of law, the people who believe in justice, once they remain outside there, hoping that something good is going to happen without them participating, they are dreaming. They are absolutely dreaming.
General, does this address the narrative that people today complain that the schools of leadership, the four leaders that mentored so many leaders, all the pipelines and think tanks for leadership in this country have gone so low that the current that after a parliament, let's say after a term of 5 years, that we are continuously deteriorating the level of leaders that we give as a country. And this is not because we don't have capable people, but it's because that the elites, the sophisticated leaders, those that would have gone to this level, have all shunned away because of what politics has become: a game of life and death, a game of money, a game of popularity and not intelligence, as said by many, a game of vicious actions, high militarizations, electoral violence that has shunned away these elites from participating in politics. And you are saying, hey, look here, when you don't come, we are going to get the bar more lower and lower.
Yeah. Every country has the leaders they deserve. Nature hates vacuums. The moment the good people get out of politics, the wrong ones get in. And the outcomes, therefore, inevitably are what happens. So I don't know why people would be confused by what they see happening. If the good people get out of politics and they sit on the sidelines and complain that politics is dirty, it is this, it is that, how will it change unless they get in?
Wow. So, in brief, they must. You've had fellow young people, fellow sophisticated people, generals say that unless we get to the wheels, the drivers will continue to be bad, regardless. But tonight, it's Uganda at Crossroads, an exclusive conversation with General Gregory Mugisha Muntu. And yes, I thank everybody that has joined the space to listen to conversations that build our future, conversations that spark uh, mindset change and influence actions towards this place that we all call home, that we are living in now, the one that will live later and forever will exist as a state called Uganda. Uh, if you have a question for General, maybe you just use the request button, or you retag me because my comment section was disembarked by, I think, Elon Musk team. Have tried to complain to them severally, but you can press the request button, or you can tag me. I'll be able to read those questions, and also you can request for that microphone. I'll give about 2 or 3 people chance to ask the retired Major General Gregory Mugisha Muntu a few questions here and there. But I think we can now continue the space. Yes, this is the Insights Express series. Every month we do a show here on X, where we speak to conversations of our time, conversations that breathe us alive, and conversations that are willing to change this place that we call home, this place that we call a country, and the continent and the world and the global world. But tonight we are having General Gregory Mugisha Muntu, who is founding president of the Alliance for National Transformation. He has also been a candidate. He was a candidate in this concluded general election, a presidential candidate representing the ANT, and former military commander, of course, former CDF. General Gregory Mugisha Muntu.
Incidentally, let me correct you. I'm not the president of ANT.
What are you, General?
You know, maybe let me highlight this. There are basically 3 models of parties in this country. And there's a model where the party president, or in some parties they call them president generals, when it comes to general elections, automatically the president of the party becomes the flag bearer of that party. Parties of that model are like Democratic Party and UPC. The other parties where you have a party leader, the nomenclature may be different. In some cases, it is a party president, like GEMA, like FDC. In NRM, they call the party leader a chairman. That's a different model, because for those that model, when it comes to general elections, then they hold internal elections for a flag bearer, the one who holds the flag for the national presidency when they are going to elections. And that flag bearer can be who is elected. He may necessarily be the party leader, or maybe even someone different. Because we've ever had that, the only party which has ever had that experience is FDC. Because FDC is the one which I think has had the experience of participating about 5 times for the 2 positions, for party president, for the flag bearer of the party. At least until about 2017, that was the case. I think it is only in 2020 when they were not able to do that, to have open competition. But that's the model. So you can have the party leader also becoming the flag bearer. At times you can have a flag bearer who's different from the party leader, like in FDC, what happened in 2016. Now the third model, so far, ANT is the one which has that model. I don't think there's any other party yet. That model is that the party leader, once a party leader cannot be the flag bearer of the party. If the party is still in its nascent stages like we were, because I was the party leader from 2019. So when 2021 we were going to elections, I resigned from the position of being the party leader so that we would start establishing a new culture consistent with our constitution. Because when we elect the substantive party leader, whoever it would be would come in knowing that they cannot run for the presidency of the country. They cannot even resign from being party leader to compete for the presidency. They would come in knowing that that is the role they are going to play. They have the mandate to build a party, organize the party, mobilize the resources to ensure that when the party is going to elections, right from the presidency down to the lowest competitive positions, that the party pushes through its candidates to success. The party leader, therefore, cannot run for any elective office in the elective offices in the country like party president. So I relinquished that position, and therefore the only thing that I have done is become a party flag bearer 2021 and 2026. But the leadership of the party is held by, it was held by Honorable Adi Salaso, who by that time was the deputy leader, but now a new leadership has been put in place. The leadership will be unveiled pretty soon, I believe in this week. So I operate within the party. I am in the top management committee of the party, but I'm not the party leader. The only, I think, parties in the world which have that kind of model, you'd be looking at parties like the Democratic Party of America and the Republican Party of America. They have a party chairperson who runs the party day to day, but never runs, for example, for the presidency of the country. So that's the culture we want to build, because we've been banned so many times. The tendency of a party leader, if they really are not so disciplined, to want to build a party around themselves and therefore edge out people because they want to run for the topmost office. It's quite tempting. We have seen it happen in many African countries. We have decided to move in that direction and therefore build it as a culture. It may be a painstaking process, but that's the direction we think we should go as a party. And when it works, which I believe it will, then it could influence the nature of politics, possibly in the other parties as well. So I wanted to make that clarification.
Wow, thanks for that clarification, General.